Welcome to Adulting Decrypted, the show where we break down the complex code of common conundrums into logical living in the effort to decrypt the code we call adulting. We are your hosts,
Roscoe the dad.
Gene,
Ashton, the big brother.
and the person kicking it off, Gideon. Today we're going to be talking about goals. So I kind of want to start with the strategy to complete goals, because we've probably all gone through goals at school. I know I have. So I just want to say some of the stuff that I learned from one of the books that I listened to on an audiobook. So it was The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone.
You really got into that book, didn't you?
Yeah, it was.
It was kind of funny because we're listening to it on a family trip, and Mom kept saying, "Hey, we got to turn that off. Let's listen to something else." And Gideon's in the backseat going, No, I'm just getting into it. Yeah, it was kind of fun. He's fun to listen to.
So I'm not super familiar with 10X rule. What is that?
So it's the 10X rule is mainly where you make your goals 10 times bigger, and then you also work 10 times harder for them. So it's just a strategy to complete them.
So if you
better.
think you need $1, then you're going to want to say, "Hey, my goal's $10. If I think I need to get up at 6, I'm going to get up at what? I don't know.
Well, I don't think time is a good representation of that one.
Okay, so what's
like you don't want to make it 10 times longer.
But you got to work 10 times harder than you think you need to. You know, there's a quote from Bill Gates that says, "Most of us underestimate what we can get done in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10 years."
Yeah.
So go ahead. You're talking about Grant Cardone.
So I just kind of wanted to talk about the strategy of it, because Grant Cardone was the person's book I was listening to. But so I like to write 10 to 20 goals a day. Just try to write 10 to 20. Think about them all the time. So I would normally write them in the morning. So I would focus on them throughout the day. And then make a balance of ones that you need to complete and also ones that you want to complete. I think that that is a big part of that. So you're not just all work goals and you're not just all play goals.
So these things that you're running through about writing the goals and all that, these are things that Grant Cardone does? Or is these something that you're doing since you read the book?
Grant Cardone in the 10X Rule was mostly just talking about like the 10X Rule and his story. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really talking about the book because, I mean, you would have to listen to it or read it to
but
get
I think
the full experience.
Ashton's asking you, Gideon, are you writing your goals every day?
No. I was at a point of time, but now I've become lazy, but I need to start again.
Okay.
Hence why we're talking about it in the Adulting podcast.
Yeah.
Well, you know, because and here's why, right? Once you come out of adolescence and everybody's telling you what to do every schoolwork assignment, then when does the pressure become? Who tells me what to do every day?
Yourself.
Kinda. I mean, I do have bosses. I do have people I work for, but yeah, a lot of it's driven on me. Most people will what's the right? Go with the stream.
Meander.
Yeah.
Meander's a good word. Well done.
You know, go ahead.
Okay. So, and then, are you ready? One of my bullet points was, again, write them every day, but in all caps. So, pretty important.
So write your goals in all caps?
No.
Or your
I'm
note
saying my bullet point was in all caps.
So the note was in all caps, not your goals.
Gideon's getting a little frustrated with himself, it sounds like, right? He's yelling at himself in that.
Yeah.
I'm imagining Gideon's goal sheet right now, like, make bike jump! Make bike jump bigger!
Pretty close.
By 10 times.
It's jump. Right now he has a jump in our backyard that's a 4-foot gap. So if you're going to follow the 10X
It's not 4
rule,
foot anymore. I moved it back about a foot.
Okay, so if it's a 5-foot gap, if you're really going to follow the 10X
Uh-oh, here
rule,
comes math.
50
Ashton.
foot.
Dude, let me do my math. I can't do it. That one was I was going to nail that math.
Because that was easy math.
I don't care.
Okay.
I was going to do it nonetheless.
You know, Gideon, you also hit on something there early as you were getting started talking about making a balance of your goals.
Yeah.
What did you mean by balance?
So, what I was saying is, if you have work goals, you also kind of want goals that you want to achieve, not just ones that you need to achieve.
Right. And need being food, shelter, clothing.
Or
even
work.
Or the funds to create food, shelter, clothing. Maybe
Yeah.
more specifically is the goal, or
And then what's some of the wants?
Wants would be, for me, like bike upgrades or a bigger dirt jump. Just stuff that
50-foot dirt jump.
that's pretty big. But stuff that I don't need to, like, get on with life.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks for expounding that.
Yeah. And then some of the other stuff I have written down is to write them like you have already completed the goals. Like, I have a 50-foot dirt jump, just so you get excited and be like, I want a 50-foot dirt jump. And so it's not just, I know, you just want to get excited.
Yeah, a lot of people go through life, right? And they talk about what they want and they tell their friends what they want, but what's the difference between a dream and a goal? Have you guys given that any thought?
A dream is, I think, something you more think about, while a goal is something you actually work to.
You know, I was thinking, so I haven't read the 10X rule, I think, like I mentioned already. And you're talking about how, so here, Greg Cardone, that's the name, right?
Grant Cardone.
Grant, not Greg.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Grant. You're saying that he said to write down your goals 10 times a day. But he's also saying to write down...
I don't think it was write them down 10 times a day.
No, well, what you're saying is write 10 to 20 goals every day.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's 10 to 20 goals. And when you write those 10 to 20 goals, you're writing them down as if they've been completed? Or
Yeah.
you're writing down separate statements
You're
as
writing.
if you had completed the goal?
You're writing down the goal as if you'd completed them.
Gotcha.
So for example, if it was this podcast, a goal would be I have a successful podcast.
Correct.
I have a full head of hair.
Yes. Yes.
Can you set a goal for that?
No, probably not. In all fairness, but maybe it's a shiny head of hair. I don't know.
A shiny head of hair. That sounds important.
But I think what you're saying is that you project yourself into the moment, in the feeling and that drives you to reach and strive.
Yeah. So I know that you talk about this one. So what is something that, like, what would you do?
Well, that's you asked me a couple days ago about what's some of my big goals, right? And we've got at 47, I've done quite a few different things. My biggest goal, I think, when I was in high school, was that I wanted a vintage VW Bug. But
In other words, a lot of work.
it transitioned into a lot of work.
A lot of work and a fire, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
probably.
that'll be a podcast. That'll be on vehicle maintenance.
We're going to need Gene to tell that story.
Absolutely.
And about how seriously he takes abandoned ship.
Oh,
we,
totally.
we were all very important in that story.
We are. However, going back to the original statement is I didn't know how to write a goal, so it was only a dream, right? And,
Yeah.
and the difference for me, really, the difference between a dream, a goal, and even just a hallucination maybe, is a hallucination is something that you've talked about. A dream is something that you've actually maybe put some thought into of how to get there, but a goal is the action steps in order to get it to happen. So
Yeah.
I did not. My dream car was a vintage VW kit car that we'll have to put some pictures on so people know what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
this car was something I was very excited about. I got that car when I was 36, and it was only because I started writing it down, started doing the research, started figuring out what it took to get there, instead of it just being a wish and a novelty concept.
So you started to put it into a goal where you put actions into it, and yeah.
So since this podcast, we're kind of diving into talking about goals, why it's important to create them, and how to create them, I think is really where we're going a lot with this. I'd like to ask, or
That was me itching my beard. That was fairly loud.
That was weird.
but I would just like to press the question further, because you said it wasn't until you're a bit older that you started to write down the goals to get the VW Bug and start to do the research. how would writing down a goal for that look? At least, how did it look for you?
Yeah, and
because we know Gideon's going to provide a template or something because he's prepared stuff like that. But for you, what was it like in that time?
Well, for me at that point in time, it had been there as a wish or a hallucination maybe for a while, and when I was out working, I was out in Pennsylvania at the time. And I was thinking of all the things that I wanted to do at some point in time. And I'm pretty close on hitting my goals that I had when I was in high school. They weren't big because I didn't dream big. I wasn't 10Xing it. I was living pretty modest. I didn't know that there was other ways. And that's why I harp on this so much, is because I was told I was too dumb to go to college. I was told that I was going to live paycheck to paycheck. But I'm out there, I'm making money and I'm succeeding financially, but I wasn't having fun. And so I thought, what did I miss? And I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted that car. So for me, Ashton, it was, I want this car. And I wrote down exactly what I was looking for. Not necessarily more of the make and the model, not necessarily the year, because that wasn't as relevant. I knew what it kind of looked like. And so I wrote down, this is what I want. This is how much free money I need to have set aside, because really this car is not practical.
Money.
Pardon?
I said play money.
Yeah, just play, that it can be thrown away, that doesn't matter. Like you guys said earlier, very expensive and very time consuming.
Don't need it for the bills.
Correct. And once I put it in there, I didn't plan on getting it back out, right? Mm-hmm. Because some things you buy, you're like, oh yeah, I can go ahead and resell that. Well, this is not one of those things. So I figured this is just throwaway money. Mm-hmm. And I got to that point, then I had to convince your mom that it was okay. So the action plan was, I want a buggy. I did not know that I have. Right? I want a buggy by this date, this time. This is my spend amount. And then I just went to work towards saving that money off to the side. It took me about 6 months, and I was able to go pay cash for it. And I remember you guys were little. Do you guys remember driving home in it?
I remember going to the storage unit, or was it a warehouse?
Yeah, it was a guy's storage unit. It was an old beater bug off of our local classified ads back in the day.
And I remember it rained super hard.
That's right.
You drove it the rest of the way to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we drove in Grandma's car.
That's right.
Was it raining or was it snowing?
I don't remember.
It was cold.
It was raining. I remember dark and dreary.
Dark. Well, I think it was dark, but it was kind of exciting because it was a buggy. But
Yeah, the buggy's always exciting.
It actually snowed on me on the way home when I finished it, and it had bad brakes, and I probably should have towed it. But, I was just young and excited and driving it home, and made it to Grandma and Grandpa's, and then put it on a trailer and drove it home.
So really, to follow the storyline for me then would be, you had a dream, and for me, when it comes to dreams, I think the difference between dreams, goals, and realities is actually drawing the lines. Because when I think of dreams, I think of dreaming, which is always very fuzzy, in
like
dreams,
a cloud.
like a cloud, or even that feeling when you're getting chased, or you want to catch up to something, you're trying to run and you can't, or you want to fly but you can't really see the ground beneath you. You get the feeling. So I feel like dreams are like that. So really, you had the dream, the bucket list, and then when you started to write down the paper, for all intents and purposes, you began to draw the picture until you could see it in front of you.
Ashton, that's a great way to look at it as far as a artistic method behind it.
Yep.
That was a very, very good observation.
Okay, so I would like to, like Ashton said, more of a format. So what I found really good and what made me feel really productive that I did for a couple of days. So I got up an hour before we would normally get up because we do family scripture study, and at 6:30. So I would get up at 5:30. I would write down my goals, and then I'd do like 20 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, like the bicycles.
Did those push-ups, that workout routine, fit with your goals that you'd been setting? Or was that just kind of to wake you up?
So it went with my goals, and it also, I like starting a day productive, so it feels productive throughout the day, because you want to start feeling excited.
Right.
So that's something I probably have to get back into, because, I remember how good I felt every morning.
That's a good point.
And it's hard right now, let's be honest. We're dealing with schools being closed in Utah with COVID and trying to get you guys to realize that, hey, we still need to get up. We need to get productive. It's one of the bits of advice I give people who are looking for jobs. Get up, shower, act like you're going to work, and go do.
Yeah.
Okay, you made me think of something, so I don't mean to hijack just a little bit.
Okay.
But you reminded me of a principle that I learned while I was in Australia. There was a talk that we used to listen to. It was, what's that speech you call that someone gives at commencement? Someone that's notable gives at commencement?
Commencement speech?
Oh, well, I had my words just in the wrong order. Cool. So there's this man, his name's Admiral McRaven. He gives a talk at the University of Texas in 2014. It's an amazing talk if you want to listen to it. And he talks about life in the military. And the talk's title, it says, if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. And it sounds really interesting because he talks about the crazy things they do in the military, the exercise they call the sugar cookie, which I think is hilarious. Also, for if you're in the military, very taxing. So it's a really interesting talk. But he says that every morning they would make their beds to perfection because of that same principle that you were talking about, Gideon, which was you start off feeling like you've accomplished a task.
Yeah.
You start off with something done. And then he says, if the rest of your day doesn't go well, you started out hyped, and when you get home, you got a nice clean bed, and you can look at it, and even if nothing else went your way, you can say, I made that bed today, and so I did accomplish something.
I think I need to try that now.
Yeah, he's like, you can never say that you didn't accomplish something because you did make your bed. So it's an interesting talk. Go listen to it, but that was what I thought of when you said you started off with something.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I have one more bullet point that I would like to say before I go into something else. So another thing when focusing on your goals is if they're really big and they seem like 10x, where it's one of my goals was make $10,000 in X amount of time, you probably want to break them into little steps so you can do something every day, not just try and go straight to the $10,000.
You know, that brings up a good question with making your bed. Is that a task or a goal?
Or is that for me or Gideon?
Anybody that...
Or Gene? Yeah, I don't know.
Gene, go for it.
I would say it's a goal because I do not do that. It's not really a task for me because it's all there. I just lay on top of it. It's going to get messed up anyway.
So
folding your clothes.
No, but you say fair enough, but it isn't. The task, the goal would be to change your lifestyle behavior to keep a cleaner, more organized room, right? That could be a goal. And one of the steps in your goal, is a task called make your bed. The goal might be, I made my bed 15 days in a row. That's a good goal. But the task and the goal, sometimes we get those confused.
And yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about that, how tasks are a little bit more simpler, goals are a bit more long-term, relatively speaking. But I really enjoyed the idea of the bed. I think it is more of a task, but I think it's also a Kickstarter for goals very far outside of itself.
I agree with that one.
Because
but no, you're fine. But here's the question though: what's the difference between a habit, a task, and a goal? Right? Because really, at the end of the day, we're trying to develop good habits.
I think habits are more muscle memory.
Okay,
go on.
That's interesting.
I'm curious.
I kind of lost my train of thought.
You said habits
well, I know what I
muscle memory.
said.
Choo-choo. There it is.
But yeah, good job getting back on the train. But it's really an anchor point,
goodness.
right? It's an anchor point to start from.
That's
It is a habit.
Yeah.
It's an anchor point. For example, what do I do every day?
You floss.
Yep. And guess
With
what I
that too.
started doing about 4 months ago?
Morning routine.
Nope. Yeah, well, yes, but
that
part of that flossing, I've tied directly to flossing. I've tied putting on sunscreen. And the reason is because I obviously we're at jeopardy for skin cancer, and so that's one of those habits. But the goal started is I want to take better care of my skin, myself, my body. My goal on the teeth was not, hey, I want to have better teeth.
To become that 1% that flosses every day.
You got it. Or I wanted to be on the higher end of the percentage category.
You wanted to be above average.
That's it. That one was above average. Then I put on the sunscreen because now I'm in the top 1% to answer that question. Because people just don't do it. Because it's so hard to remember to do it. Because you can state a goal, but if you can make that goal a habit, then it really changes your life.
And maybe not even the entire goal, because the goals... Because I think to some extent, the sunscreen is a task.
Sure it is. Absolutely.
But I like how you said, now I'm losing my train. It was how this goal created a better life, but, man, I really lost it. It's gone. It had to...
The nice thing is
the last sentence that you said, but I forgot it.
The nice thing is we can just hit rewind a couple times and find it if you're on the podcast and you're trying to figure it out. But the whole premise is trying to make a daily thing that you have to do more of a habit, because it's so hard to make decisions every day. Mm-hmm. So, but a goal is the lifestyle, the thing you're pursuing, I think is where you're at. The habit is once you've got it or something like it to lock in, and then it just becomes a thing that you... Because my goal is not to get the buggy again. I think Gene might have a goal of getting it running.
Again.
Yeah.
I feel like Gene owes the people this story, because we've kind of hinted around it, and I don't know the next opportunity we're going to get to share it.
Okay, so we just finished the brakes on it because they weren't working before, because they failed when I was driving on a public road.
At this point,
And you decided to ram into a curb.
No, I didn't.
You ran over a curb.
No, I don't even know where you're getting this information. So then we're testing out the brakes. We drove around the block. We were fine. We're pulling into the driveway. I stop to put it into first, and right now it's in neutral. Mm-hmm. And so then we're pulling up, and then I look in my rearview mirror, and I see orange. And then I'm like, what? And I look back, and the back of the buggy is entirely on fire.
Huge flames.
I don't know if it was like the entire, but it was like a tower of flame. It wasn't like a big bush of flame. It was like a tower of flame.
Dude, what are you...
A pillar of fire.
You guys are ridiculous.
Gideon,
go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm kind of insane.
And so then I'm like, what do I do? And Dad's like, we need to get out. And so he's like, get out. And so I'm like, okay. I hop out of the car. Don't even put it in neutral or any gear for that matter. And then he's like, what are you doing? Jumps back in from the passenger side, push on the brake. Luckily, they were working. And then I'm like, Then I run inside, and I'm like, fire extinguisher. And then we grab it, and then I give it to Ashton. He pulls it out like it's a grenade pin.
It was so sick.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I looked awesome.
And then he sprays it all down. We finish. My dad says one thing after that. Why didn't we catch it on video?
No, seriously, if it's not on Facebook, it didn't happen, guys. Anyway, so is that a goal to get the buggy fixed, Gene?
Yeah.
So what are some of the tasks associated with getting that done?
Figuring out that spacer thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, the gaps.
Yeah.
On the starting points.
Yep.
So, anyways, but so your goals might have a group of tasks below them, right? So we go after something big. It's not something you can do all at once. There might be a goal that says, hey, I'm going to do this all at one time, but that's more of just a task. I'm going to go do this. And those are very important to the Admiral's point. If you get in the habit of doing your task every day, then you're able to look at bigger picture goals because you're doing your tasks.
Okay, so I think we got that part pretty covered. I would like to talk about the marshmallow study, is what people would call it.
I like marshmallows.
Yeah.
We know where Ashton might have played on this one, but go ahead.
So I think it was coming. I just thought about success and how it was how the certain percentage of people that waited was more successful from their study. But I read an article, and they did it recently, where the first time back in, I think, like 1960.
Maybe you should explain
do you remember
the experiment.
Okay, so
some people might not know.
some old people that are probably really old now in like 1960s.
By the way, old people that are probably old now.
Because they were in 1960. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Now
So
that
they
we've
were
offended
forming an
somebody.
experiment with preschoolers where they would put a marshmallow on the table, and they told them that they were going to get another marshmallow. And if they waited for 15 minutes, they could get that other marshmallow. But if they ate the one on the table, then they wouldn't get the other marshmallow. So it's just tempting the kids. And they were saying how patience leads to more success and whatnot. So they decided to redo this study, where the first time they were doing it with 90 kids. Now they're doing it with 900 kids, so a lot more. And if on the second study, if they ate the marshmallows before they got the second one, they actually correlated it because they got lots of information. It was more with their social and economic background. So if they were, let's say, poor, or I can't remember the other word for that, but they would know that they wouldn't always get that gratification. Like sometimes there wouldn't be food on the table, supposedly. So they're like, it's here now, so I'll just take it now. And then the people that waited longer usually were from wealthier families. So I just thought that was kind of cool.
So did they follow that study up, the second study up, or has it not been long enough?
It has not been long enough.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the first study, when they ran it, and they said, hey, based on being able to delay gratification, because really that's what the concept is, right? Is delay the gratification, then you can have the reward you want. And most of us struggle with that, right? We're going, hey, I've got $5 in my pocket, I'm going to go spend $5. Or if you're a good American, you got $5 in your pocket, you're going to go spend $5.50 because you're going to spend a little bit more than what you have. However, right, but what the principle of the study was is if we can learn how to delay gratification, then we can get more, we can do more, we can be more successful. That was the end result, but you're saying there was a study that might be differencing of that or confirming that?
So different from that. I remembered that in the article they had followed them up through grade school. So I think they're in high school now, the people that they had studied. And they figured out that it didn't change. There was no correlation.
Really?
To whether they waited or whether they ate it. It was more their social and economical.
But still, see, here's my struggle with that, right? Because they're still in high school. And I'm not saying yes or no, but I think that the principle of delayed gratification is something that we need to be careful in understanding how it works.
Yeah. I'm not saying that that's...
No, it's okay. It's good banter. This is what the purpose is, right? Is to better understand where you're coming from and what the study's reading. And so The fun part for me is that you found a new study that you get to now follow into your adulthood and see what happens with that group of people.
Yeah.
So if I'm translating this study correctly, you're saying that the kids that grew up in a household that was potentially able to delay gratification better than those that were not? Is that kind of the idea it's getting at? And then as they grew up, it showed that even though they were good at that skill prior, now as they grew up in high school, the study became irrelevant and kids kind of just went all over the place.
Technically, I'm just saying that they weren't noticeably more successful.
Right. And that does make sense to me because it's been such a short span. What you're saying is there's delayed gratification and the results you get on a test don't directly correlate.
Yes.
Gotcha. But then the question to me becomes is let's fast forward that 10 years and say, okay, if we can learn how to delay some of those gratifications to hit our bigger, because really that's what it is. The reason why you don't get up at 5 a.m. anymore is because all you're doing is delaying the gratification of the start of the day by letting the mattress win, right? There is a wrestling match with the mattress, and it has you. There's an old adage that says mind over mattress, right? It's not mind over matter, it's mind over mattress. And you have to make that decision. When do you think you have to make that decision? Because that's been a hard one for me to change.
I think the sooner the better.
No, what I mean, though, is do you need to make that decision first thing in the morning?
I think that you should do it before you go to sleep. So not like right when you wake up, because then throughout the day you'll probably be forcing yourself out of that mindset.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I think what you need to do is prep yourself the night before, so that you're going to bed at a reasonable hour, so that therefore you can get the sleep you need, and then turn around and get up at the early hour and get started and jumping right into your day.
But I think it's kind of both. You got to do it at the beginning and like right before you go to bed, so you like have it already in your head. Like, I'm gonna get up this early, but then if you don't follow up with it in the morning, you can just like hit snooze and like, oh, it's fine. I can sleep in. I don't have anything. So it's kind of a mix of both.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gene. And I think the second part of your statement there says I don't have anything, because if you don't feel like you have to accomplish a task right out of the chute, then that desire to get up and get going isn't there. And that's why this is such a challenge, I think, for you guys right now, is because we don't have something to do right after.
We don't have school at 8:15 in the morning.
Correct. And so we delay that getting up, which is we're living in gratification, not delaying the gratification. We're delaying getting up. So I think this is a good point, Gene.
So because you said it, but it's the kid that ate the marshmallow, really,
Is the one that's still in bed.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed.
So by staying in bed, you're accepting the gratification rather than delaying the gratification, just to kind of push that to clarification.
Perfect.
But so I kind of want to ask, so we've talked about delaying gratification. How does that tie into what you have for us for goals and becoming more responsible, productive adults, Gideon?
I think that talking about goals with I almost think that instant gratification would be better on some sorts, because if you want to get something done as soon as possible, you're going to get it done as soon as possible. So you're not going to push back like the due date or when you want to complete it.
But I feel like the one thing that you have to think about is it's not instant gratification to be working towards a goal, because you have to do that work.
I mean,
you're delaying the gratification of
so
actually.
It wouldn't really be instant. It would more be the fastest possible gratification.
I would agree with that.
Right, but some things still take time, right? For example, that's where we get ourselves in trouble. You can't go out and plant a garden today and harvest a tomato tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's going to take you the 3, 4, 5 month growth cycle, right? And I think that's where you're going, Gene, isn't it, a little bit?
Yeah, it is.
Because some things can't be accomplished right away, but you can put everything in action, right? And that's what you're saying. Instead of, is that fair, Gideon, or no?
Yeah, I think it kind of ties back to one of my points before, where it says, let me find it. If you have a really big goal, one that would take months, to break it into steps that you could do every day to get there.
I like it.
If you need to eat a whole elephant, eat it one bite at a time.
Well, and it goes back to that consistency, right? Because really, if you're consistent, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I think that we want to say, oh, I worked on it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm taking Saturday, Sunday off. Because we've had that ingrained into us as a society that Saturday and Sunday are play days or church days or relax days, when really it's just another day to accomplish your goals. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And that's why that brushing, flossing has become so easy, because that's something you do every day. And then the stuff you don't do every day, you have to find a way to remind yourself.
Like writing your goals every morning.
Agreed. Writing your goals every morning is a great step. Brian Tracy actually recommends it, especially while you're trying to clarify what your goals are, is if you write them every day, they consistently pop up. And then after a month of doing that, then you pick the biggest ones, because those are the ones that are bothering you all the time. Once you've done that, then you need to figure out some tricks how to anchor those goals into daily habits and rituals. Does that make sense? Where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So I do like, but the problem is with writing them every day, it gets hard and it's time consuming. Mm-hmm. I love vision boards, and I just found a cool app that's got vision board on it. So what you do is you take a picture of something that you want or that you're after, And then when you're looking at it, you try and absorb the feeling, right? And because setting goals without really understanding the intention behind the goal, you're missing a big gap, right? And you can only control the input. So if you know what your goal is and you know what the intention of that goal is, I think you can get there faster. It's not just a goal for a goal's sake.
Right. And I feel like tying into where Gideon was going as well is with the goals that you have. Obviously, you want to go somewhere, and those things are going to take time, hence delaying the gratification. But you want to set small, measurable,
I'm
reachable,
shaking my head, yes. Keep going.
relevant, and time-specific goals.
You just brought me into my next segment.
But those little things are things that are much easier to reach, so you can feel the gratification of something while delaying the ultimate gratification of your goal, like the buggy in that experience, because you were setting those small little things that help you eventually reach that goal.
Yeah, I mean, skipping eating out, some of those kind of things that you sacrifice for. Right.
And it I would imagine that empowered you in the process of reaching that goal.
Absolutely.
To be able to do that. Anyway, Gideon.
Okay, so I think that we should end this off with a good way to make your goals instead of just how to complete them. So what Ashton was saying was a SMART goal. So it's specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and timely. So specific being knowing exactly what you want.
That's that I am statement that you started with, right?
Yeah.
I like it.
Measurable as in give it a quantity of some sort.
What about even, I guess timely. Never mind, you're right. Yep. Some type of measure.
Attainable.
Because you'll never know if you reached a goal if you don't have a way to say you measure it.
Right.
Yeah.
It goes back to that dream concept. It's still in that fuzzy was a bear.
I have a funny story that goes with this. A measurable thing. A good example of that when, again, out when I was on my mission and working with other individuals, we lived together. And when I started, I hadn't yet lived on my own. Well, I had lived on my own, but I allowed myself to get in the bad habit of just letting the dishes pile up until it was absolutely necessary for me to wash them. And this sort of habit does not work for a lot of other people. And now I've learned, and it doesn't work for myself. But I had someone who, it got to a point where he wrote a sign that said, I will, like, it was like blank, so like your name, I blank will wash the dishes and clean the sink after every meal. And he had me sign it, and he signed it. And so a couple of meals later, there's a whole bunch of dishes in the sink. And he's like, you signed the paper. And then I went, well, you didn't say how long after the meal. And so on the same paper we already signed, he's like, well, I'm making a contractual adjustment. And he put 1 minute after every meal. And then we had to countersign again. So that's why I think measurable is so important.
Yeah. And then attainable as in, even if it's 10x, you still want something that you will, how should I say this?
I'm gonna jump in there and help you out for a second. I think because if it's too far out, and this is what I go back to when we started. Bill Gates' quote of saying, we underestimate what we can do in 10 years, but overestimate what we can do in that 1 year, right? So
yeah.
So if you can become a millionaire, Gideon, in the next 10 years. There's no doubt about it. However, if you say I want to be a millionaire tomorrow, it's not obtainable, right? And so then you get frustrated and you quit. And so you've got to put a method into place. Gene's over here shaking his head.
Well, you could rob a bank.
Yep, that's fair. But
I
Gideon at 13
could he takes a longer time to plan than a day, but
and could Gideon go in and rob a bank for $1 million? You could probably get $10, maybe $20 as Billy the Kid, but you hey, hand me the money. Sorry.
Just
okay.
Gideon doing
I think we've got attainable figured out.
Okay, and then the next was reasonable. So I think that ties pretty much the same as attainable.
Well, the only difference for me is reasonable. I started off saying, oh, I want to grow a full head of hair. That's not reasonable. You know what I mean? I want to go play NFL linebacker.
Hair implants.
Yeah, but I didn't grow it, right? If I want to go say I want to save $10,000, or I don't know how much hair implants cost, but say I want to save $20,000 for that project, then that would be a goal, right? A goal to get a hair implant, you could do that. That's still reasonable, but for me to grow hair is unreasonable. It just can't happen.
Another thing that I like to tie in with reasonable is relevant as well.
Yeah,
Because for
fair.
me, it helps me visualize it a bit better. Because like you're saying, it doesn't make sense for you to save that amount of cash for a hair implant. Because it's not what you want more than others.
Relevant to me
Right.
is what you're
It's
saying.
not relevant to the main goal. So if Gideon's main goal is to create his bike jump or whatever, I don't know what goal we're going off of. Your $1 million in a day. Like, you gotta... Everything that you set as part of that goal should be relevant, or it should have some way that it plays into your bigger goal rather than just being specific, measurable, and possible, achievable, attainable. It also needs to relate to what you're setting.
Okay, and then the last one is timely. So, like a time frame where you write down a specific date. I don't think time is reasonable. Like, I want to finish this at 4:19, but more.
It depends on the goal. Some goals can be very specific like that. Like, say you have a school assignment that you want to finish like
That's fair.
10 minutes before to actually do.
I'm saying more like big goals.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, but this launching this podcast was a very timely goal, and we were candidly we were under the gun. There was a couple things that we didn't plan enough time for on the timely side, but we still looked and figured out how to make them happen. So I wouldn't say that setting it too short always hurts you. To your point, Gene, I think, and Gideon is that sometimes you have to push yourself, and it's a good thing.
And adding into that, I feel like this is an important thing to mention that we also talked about in last podcast. When we get to setting goals and plans and things like that, I think it's very easy to try and get something to line up perfectly, and then if it doesn't play out perfectly like we want it to, our minds can shut down from building on it. So when it comes to setting something specifically timely in this example, set a time. But if it happens too quickly, great. But if it takes a little bit too long, don't freak out and say, well, I set a bad goal because it didn't fit the time frame. Just understand that you can still achieve these goals. You can.
So I've got a question for you. We love to ski, right? I don't know who's listening who likes to ski, but what's the destination of skiing?
The bottom of the hill.
Is it the destination?
Not the hospital.
That's fair, but it's not the hospital. But the purpose of skiing, is it to be at the top of the hill or the bottom of the hill? Which one is it?
The in between. The journey.
Thank you, Gene. Journey. No. Yeah, so I think really, if I could, and then I know Gideon wanted to reiterate some things, but as it pertains to goals, I really want you to think about two things as we leave this as far as being an adult. First off, you can control your inputs. You can't always control the results, and that's what you're talking about, Ashton. You're going, hey, I put all this work together and it didn't turn out the way I planned on it. That's great. And then number two,
And then don't let it discourage you.
That's
like,
right.
if the output doesn't fit.
That's right. You got to realize if the inputs are working, and if they're not, then what do I need to change? What input do I need to change to get the right goal? And then number two that I want you to remember is to enjoy the journey. Because at some point in time, if we say, and Sabrina, I caught her on this afternoon, she goes, I'll be happy when the semester's over. And I'm like going, no, you got to be happy now. You've got to enjoy this process because we're always learning, right? So with that, that's my last two segments as the dad. So whatever, Gideon, however you want to.
Okay, so I just kind of want to loosely go over what we've gone through, at least what I have gone through for this podcast. So we've gone over SMART goals. We've gone over like the strategy to completing your goals. we talked about the marshmallow study. That was pretty awesome. And we talked about how, I guess this is just going back over the strategy. So I would like to close this off by thanking you guys for listening. If you have any cool stories about goals, please send them to us. We would love to hear them. And thank you for listening. See you next time.
Welcome, dedicated podcast listener, to the end of episode 2 of Adulting Decrypted, where we talked about goals, as you know already. We're so proud of you for making it to the end. We really appreciate the dedication and the kindness of your heart to make it here. Well, since you're here, we're going to let you on a little secret. If you comment your adulting successes or failures, hopefully not as many of those, but if you comment those on our Instagram or Facebook page, we'll feature you in our next podcast episode, because we know that adulting is best done as a team, and we can learn more from each other. And the 4 of us in our little studio setup, we're not the biggest sample size of adults, so when you get more people on it together, we can learn more from each other. So please always comment your stories, and we'll enjoy that together. Now, we have a song from Gene and Gideon, another Like an Adult song, but this time about goals. Enjoy.
Sweet.
I be adulting. Hey!
Going for the very first time. Like an adult. Making smart goals for my life.
Life.
I love it. That's awesome. That's a wrap, dude. That's a wrap, dude. That's a wrap, dude. That's a wrap, dude.